How's it going, guys? Ricecup here with another freestyle video. The last one we covered sailing before the year started, and now we're going to be covering two super important updates coming out later on this year. The first one we're going to talk about is the Blood Moon Rises. That's going to be the meat of this video. We're going to be talking about a bit about the quests, a bit about the rewards, and so on. And we will also end on the rates for blogs that they have mentioned. That one will try our best to cover what they've given us, but it's not that much. But anyways, lots of exciting things to cover, so let's get right on with it. So let's dive right into the Blood Moon Rises update. So if you don't know what that name means, it's actually the name of the new Grandmaster quest coming out, and it is part of the Vampire / Megarare quest line. And it will be the finale, effectively, to the quest line. And this quest, when you finish, you will be able to access the ancestral lands of the vampires, which has a ton of rewards and just new content that you can explore after the quest, like a new boss, a bunch of skilling activities, and things like that. So anyways, a note on releasing timing. So they're going to aim for a summer 2026 release. So they just have a lot of other things going on right now, so they just didn't think they would actually put it out sooner like originally planned. And the quest requirements, though, they did say that it's going to be several 70+ skills and a combat level 110, which does make sense because even Songs of the Elves, for example, is a bunch of 70+. But the combat level rec, though, is pretty high up for recommendation, so this is arguably could be the hardest Grandmaster quest yet. Maybe like as hard as Desert Treasure too in terms of the fights. That's kind of what it's giving us vibe wise. So let's get right on with the rewards after you finish this quest. So the flail will be getting upgraded. The attack stats have gone better, as you can see, 68 slash, 46 strength, and the biggest one, it's the attack speed. It is now Dragon Scimitar speed 4 ticks. So that is going to be massively stronger against fires. It's going to be really nice because I love AFKing fires, for example, for some bloodshards occasionally. There's also going to be another separate weapon. This one is going to be a spec weapon. We don't have a name for it yet, but its special attack is called the Seeking Lunge. This special attack weapon costs 50% energy and will always deal 70% of his maximum damage on a successful hit. If the target's remaining HP is lower than that value, though, the attack will instead roll 70% of its maximum accuracy, making it a reliable way to finish off tougher targets. So this weapon, the special, is meant to help with landing consistent finishing blows. And Jagex even mentioned that it will pair really well with the new enemies that you'll be fighting for the bloodshards. So there's going to be another enemy that you can kill for bloodshards after this quest as well, besides just your regular Vires. They're called like the Venators, which we'll talk more as we scroll down. And it will be also useful just for finishing enemies off, but the primary value apparently is going to be for players tackling vampire tasks. Very interesting why they keep mentioning that, right? And the special attack stats here, it's a two-handed weapon, 50 attack requirement. It has a 100 stab. So I assume that's the primary style, it's stab. And it also has 70 melee strength, but attack speed's kind of slow. It's on like the rune crossbow speed, 5 ticks. I do see this weapon being fairly useful since it just kind of just comes with finishing this quest, right? So that way you don't have to deal with RNG if you need another spec weapon so that you can use for PVMing. But for some reason though, they really want you to use it at the new vampire enemies. So I'm guessing maybe the new vampire enemies have some mechanic where it's really important that you just finish it off like consistently fast or something. So we'll have to see. So in the land of Imperium, we have some crazy looking dangerous creatures. So we even have deers with insanely sharp, bloody spikes for antlers. And you have these like venomous bibbits, apparently. These flies that suck your blood, of course. You know, vampire snails, ticks, blood serpents. This bird that has vampire wings. Ancient Viral Fire. Ooh, that's cool. And the Maxilla Beast apparently does not see very well. And the Picus Bear, Like, holy shit, they all are very dangerous looking. I'm not gonna lie. I do like the look though. It looks very menacing. So that makes sense, you know, coming from a place where the vampires comes from. And here's some of the fauna here. Even the freaking plants look dangerous, man. So yeah, watch out, I guess. Maybe some of these can do damage to you if you get next to them. That's just my guess, no idea. And one of the most important fauna that you'll be encountering in Vampirium is the Bloodwood trees. So the Bloodwood trees, they say that its primary use or purpose is so that you can get the Bloodwood saps. However, though, the XP rates look pretty good. So there's various ways that you can train with the Bloodwood trees though. So there's like a lower effort method, which is like 50 to 60k an hour, and then there's interactable parts of this content where I guess if you focus and you click on it at the right time or something, you can effectively almost double your rates, going from 50 60 to 80 to 90k. So I think this is still pretty good XP, even though it's meant to be like a resource content farm. But effectively the Bloodroot saps though are going to be used to make seeker arrows, but we'll get to that in a second. The saps, you get them from cutting these trees, but you can also get them from PVMing though, as they say, but it's only going to be in small increments from PVM. So PVM will not replace the way in which you farm for these saps, because I think a lot of players, especially Iron Man, will want to get thousands and thousands of saps. So the best way to do it is definitely to chop these Bloodroot trees. Let's talk about the seeker arrows, right? So the seeker arrows are basically upgraded versions of all existing arrows using the Bloodwood saps. So to make the seeker arrows, there's many ways, but they all involve using the saps somehow, right? So if you already have arrows, let's say you have dragon arrows, you could just apply the sap to turn those arrows into the seeker dragon versions, or you can apply the sap on a log. For example, let's say use it on a redwood log. Then when you fletch them into shafts, it will become seeker arrow shafts. So there's quite a few ways that you'll be able to transfer whatever arrows from whatever stage, right? Even from the very beginning or to the end stage with the sap, and it'll work out. So guys, the seeker arrows got adjusted on the latest blog and it's finalized because it passed. So let's talk about the seeker arrow stats now. So all seeker arrows give a passive 20 attack accuracy. So that makes the arrows any form of like T-bow, I guess, a Venator bow, right? Any weapons that uses arrows will gain 20 additional accuracy straight up. So that's quite big, especially on tankier enemies that you're going to be fighting. I can't think of anything right now, but maybe like vanguards, you know, like challenge mode vanguards would really be nice for those. And also it will raise your arrows minimum hit to 3. What that means is if you land a successful hit and it originally rolled a 1 or a 2, then instead it becomes a 3. So it also increases consistency in damage as well. So this is quite a good upgrade overall. Like for endgame PVMers, you'll absolutely want to use the upgrade versions, particularly on endgame content, right? The hardest content like raids, for example, right? Or Inferno, things like that. You definitely want these arrows. Coliseum, right? Woodcutting content, the Bloodwood will be quite useful for players, especially irons, of course. So the next thing we're going to talk about are the Stymphikes. I probably said it wrong, but it's okay, you know? And these are basically new hunting creatures, and it comes in 2 steps. So the first step is that you will do hunter to gather baits. And apparently that's going to be where the best part of the XP will come from. And then the second part is using a bait to catch these birds. And they don't really give like actual resources that are notable, but it's mainly just for XP. So this is going to be incredibly good XP. I assume maybe even in like the 150, 200k range, I imagine, right? Because it requires 76 hunter just to do the first part, and then the last part is 82 hunter. So it's pretty high up there. It's gotta be competitive since you're not getting like rewards, physical rewards. But this is what they look like. So yeah, you just basically use the bait on the tree, right? And then you catch them. And apparently there's some tie-in with these birds and the new Venator Slayer creatures that you can kill. Something about if you kill enough of them or something, you can kill those Venator vampires off task, because otherwise you have to do them on task. And then we're going to be talking about the leech fins. So this is a new fishing method, and it's similar to kind of like the Bloodwood, where there's low effort styles and then there's a higher effort style. So there's like interactables that you can, if you pay attention, right, click on it for more XP, right? They've been doing a lot of those for new skilling methods. For example, follow more house thieving, right? You'll notice there's things that like glow and then you want to click on it for extra XP. But anyways, you will be getting about 60k an hour, which is really, really good for fishing. You know, as far as fishing skill goes, that's a pretty good rate. So they didn't actually say what the fishing level rec is, but they did say it's targeted towards players that are around 75 fishing or so. But this is mainly just for XP. Well, you were supposed to be able to catch these and then turn them into like the new leech fin sandwich. But anyways, that did not pass the poll. So this is the only thing that did not pass the poll. Everything else passed. So the leech fin sandwich was going to be like a super innovative food because it just had like a crazy effect. So first of all, it would just heal you for 16, right? And then if you're able to deal melee damage within 12 seconds of your first time eating that food, you gain an additional 16 HP. But it does set your delay to 9 ticks, which is a lot longer than normal food, 3 times longer. But effectively though, this food can heal you for 32. And I think that is better healing versus other food if you can get off that second part. But again, it did not pass, so there's really nothing to worry about. Although they did say, though, they do want to revisit this idea in the future. So probably try to understand what about it people don't like. But my guess is pretty simple. I just imagine people find the other part, this part here, right? The secondary trigger heal to be too complicated. But I want to go back to the leech fins a bit. So at 60k an hour, they did say it's going to be medium effort. So it kind of reminds me of bar fishing, but maybe without having to drop the fish. Because if I don't have to drop the fish, then this would be a nice alternative. Except you don't get the agility and the strength XP though. But yeah, 60k per hour for somewhat AFK fish is definitely solid. So we're finally going to talk about the Venators properly. So these guys are basically the same species as like Sarpus from Theater of Blood, and they are a level 74 Slayer creature that you can kill on task. For the most part, is on task only, and they give you really good rates at bloodshards compared to Vires. But they are not AFK though. You do need to pay attention. It is much more effort. So that's the trade-off. You want really fast shards, then you kill these guys. Or if you want to just stick to AFK and chill, not in a rush, Vires. Personally, I'm probably still going to do Vires, especially with that new weapon. It's going to help a lot anyways. And the new Spec weapon, if I feel like using it. But you can actually fight them off task too. But you do need to meet that requirement though. We don't know how many Stymphikes you have to quell. But you know those birds things, right? The hunter method that we just talked about. Yeah, for whatever reason, if we can lower their numbers, then we are going to unlock the ability to kill them off task if you really want to. But there's really not too much more about it, right? It's just the people that really wanted bloodshards and complain about the options previously, this is going to be your hopefully solution. So now we move on to a very exciting part of this blog, which is your maggots. They basically are like aliens from the Aliens franchise, and they also take over the host's body or something after they like hatch. The thing that we really want to focus on is the king, the Maggot King himself. So effectively it is an endgame boss around the Phosani level, I guess below the Infernal level is what they're talking about. And this is the design. So as you can see, it basically infected, like, I want to say a vampire, right? And then it hatched out of it, but then it just takes over his body. So the Maggot King will drop a few rewards. The first one is one of the new strongest melee spec weapons in the game that it focuses on crush. This is actually not the name. They later changed it. So let's go to the other blog to show you guys the more updated stuff. So it's going to be called the Crimson Kisten. And here's what it looks like in the model. But yeah, it's pretty cool. But they did rework the stats of the Kisten a little bit here. They gave it a bit more accuracy. So this is not a very strong like main hand weapon. They're really just telling the players like, look, man, we're not trying to bring out a kind of somewhat endgame but not quite BIS just main hand crush weapon, because they want to do that in the future. They're basically hinting at it. So it could come from, who knows, race 4 or something. But yeah, they have other plans for like a main hand crush weapon, or they're cooking up something else. And it kind of makes sense because we don't really have like insanely good crush special attack weapons for DPS. I mean, like we have the Dragon Mace, but that weapon's like 20 years old, right? So effectively, the Crimson Kisten is the crush equivalent of Dragon Claw. It's not like the effect works the same, but like the damage output, you know, is very similar to Dragon Claws. Effectively, though, it's going to be better than Dragon Claws on things that are extra weak to crush, but more resistant to other styles. So I'm assuming things like Nightmare. And if you're going to bring it to like Vedion or something, probably like Vedion and some other crush bosses. Tecton, I guess. We don't really have that many new crush bosses. We've had crush bosses in the past, right? But yeah, hopefully they will bring out some more crush bosses, and I think that is definitely a hint. Usually if they make something like this, they'll roll out some other bosses or enemies that are going to be relevant with this weapon, right? But let's talk a little bit more about how it works here. So the special attack, when activated, it's called Brutal Swing. It makes 4 accuracy rolls in a single hit. So unlike Dragon Claws that has 4 separate hits, it's 1 single hit. If any of these rolls succeed, the attack deals 70 to 110% of your maximum hit. So just 1 roll out of the 4, it's already going to do some decent damage. And then each additional roll successful further amplifies that attack, increasing both the minimum and maximum hit by 20% each. So here's the breakdown. If you manage to get it all the way to 4 successful rolls, then it is 130 to 170% damage. So this weapon requires 60 attack and 85 strength. So unlike the Dragon Claws, it has an additional 85 strength requirement, which I would say is a drawback, right? For people that are trying to build around this weapon, it's going to be a bit more annoying, but not too hard to get around that, right? But anyways, it has 56 strength and 80 attack accuracy, which I wish I knew it was a 1-hit or 2-handed weapon. It did not specify, but I'm just gonna believe in what Jags is saying here, and that, you know, they've done the math. And of course, this is after feedback from players, right? So a lot of players have already done the whole DPS calcs and whatever, but effectively this will beat Dragon Claws against crush enemies, right? Such as Araxor, things like that. So there's one minor drawback as well with this spec, is that if you're using the spec against something like Fire Giants, whom it's not necessarily weak to crush, but it's just really easy to hit, when all 4 accuracy rolls land, then it's whatever the max hit would be minus 1, and that would be the actual max hit. So it's kind of like Dragon Claws, where if you were to land a max of Dragon Claws, it's max minus 1, and then that becomes the actual max. The reason why they do that is just so that the Dragon Claws will still just be a little better against things that have like just generally low defense over this Kisten. So the Maggot boss will drop the Alpha Venator Tooth. So to make this new necklace for range, you need to get the Alpha Venator Tooth from the Maggot boss. And then with 84 crafting, you can combine the tooth with the Necklace of Anguish. And then it becomes this new amulet here. So they now call it the Necklace of Rapture. And here is the finalized stats. It will give 20 range accuracy, which is really good. 8 range strength, so it's 3 more than the Anguish, and 3 prayer bonus. So that is definitely going to be a noticeable upgrade, especially the range strength. Like the twisted bow will definitely get some max hits, and just about any ranged weapon will probably get at least one max hit. So quite a big upgrade. It also requires, I believe, 90 hit points. Oh yeah, it shows here. So it's just like the Rancor. You need 90 hit points to wear. Not a big deal. So yes, they did lower the stats of the necklace and the arrows from the first revision, which is okay because I think these are perfectly fine and definitely worth getting. So let's scroll down to Vampirium ecosystems and drops. Effectively, they're just kind of giving you guys a lore idea of like what kind of resources you will just find. So things like jewelries, ore, fish offcuts, Mortmire fungus, hard leather, grapes and wines. And also you're going to see some really unique items that are exclusive, right, to Vampiriums, like Clotted Blood, which you can use to double a bucket of sap or a vial of blood, which is pretty nice. You're going to get Venator fangs and teeth, which you can use in the creation of dragon arrows and darts. So this one is really important because a lot of people have one Ajax to give people a way to create dragon arrows or darts. So we don't know how insanely effective the Venator fangs and teeth are going to be. I'm guessing you get them from the Venator vampires and of course like the maggot boss, right? Things like that. So I do wonder how much like or how many you can make, like assuming you know you gather it, including that time, right? Like an hour. And you're also gonna get the leech fin and Stymphikes feathers, but the leech fin, it's kind of pointless. Ah man, now that it didn't pass the poll, getting these is kind of like, what do you even do with them? I guess you just make, we don't know actually. I actually don't know what the hell we're gonna do with them. Maybe it's just a drop angle, right? You're gonna get Levic, which is used as bait for hunting Stymphikes. So that's the creature, I guess, that we'll be hunting on the first stage of hunting these birds. Again, this could be really good hunter XP. You're also gonna get these dulled equipment, so it's kind of like the rusty sword from like pickpocketing hammer birds, because then you can I guess clean them or polish them and you can get like up to rune weapons. Dull jewelry, so you becomes the standard jewelry of the same type. So I wonder if we can get like dull glories, you know, dull dragonstone jewelry. That'd be interesting. Anyways, that's about it for the Blood Moon Rises coming out in the summer. I'm super excited for it. Not really a quest though, to be honest. I'm more excited for the actual area, right? Because they really are hyping up this area. R3 is also opening Vampirium 2 this year, so that's kind of crazy. I guess they kind of planned it together. All right, guys, I'm not gonna lie. I literally was talking about the new Raids 4 stuff. I went through both blogs and I didn't record it. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to do this again. All right, anyways, there's two blogs, all right? And unfortunately, neither of them have insane information that we can really go super deep into. But anyways, let's go on the first blog, the first look. So the Fracture Archives is the new raid coming out later this year, and it's gonna be Guthician themed. So the Archives is basically a place where I guess Guthix put a bunch of really powerful items or whatever in his in this archive, right? And it's in the same cave as while Guthix sleeps. The requirement is while Guthix sleeps. We are going to be, I guess, looting some god booty, effectively. But yeah, anyways, there is going to be guardians in this archive that, you know, is protecting all the goods. And there's also going to be like factional enemies that are like, I guess, also plundering from other gods too. So we're also gonna have to, you know, compete with them and beat them. Anyways, this will be like the hardest raid ever. They did say something like that. Yeah. So that's gonna be really cool. Also, the scaling for players is 2 to 8 player scale. Now you can solo, except the scaling will only go as low as 2. So it's going to be extra hard to solo. But they already know people are gonna really want to solo, just because, yeah, a lot of players in RuneScape, man, they really don't want to do group content, even if it's raids, even if it's in an MMO. I get it. So yeah, it is soloable already, confirmed. Now they do want to do a practice mode, but they're not going to let players utilize that in the release. They're only going to release the practice mode weeks later. We don't know how many weeks, just weeks later. And I think that's a really good thing, because TO8, they messed up so hard because they let players just do 0 invocations right away. And it basically made the expert modes so trivial, right? In the sense that people just cleared it consistently, easily within just a few hours, right? Which is like, oh man, you know, such a letdown. So I'm definitely looking forward to the community as a whole freaking dying and struggling and, like, you know, slowly learning and building up that knowledge base. Yeah, that's gonna be great. I would love to experience that again. Something like Theater of Blood, right? Or even Chambers release day. Also, on the wipe mechanic, it's also going to be a bit different because it's changing as time goes on. So the first week, full team wipes will reset the raid. So what I interpret from that is Theater of Blood, right? So if everybody dies in that particular room, then the raid kicks you out. Now, it's not always going to be the case, because in the following weeks after, they're going to move to a TOA style wipe system where you have infinite tries but reduced rewards and dwindling resources, which is okay. I mean, I kind of would have just preferred this being the constant mechanic, but I get it. They do want as many players to try this out as possible, right? So I get that, and they're trying to meet, I guess, somewhere in the middle between the easiness of TOA and the more punishing of, like, Theater of Blood, right? Anyways, let's show you what else is in here. So there's really not much other than some, you know, art. We got the environmental stuff. Looks pretty cool here, as you can see. Definitely reminds me of, like, the World's Race quest, if you guys ever did that quest back in the original RuneScape. Like, the environment and such is very reminiscent of that, because that's also Guthix's, like, basically sleeping grounds, you know, where he was slumbering. Spoiler alert. And you have this boss. This is a really cool looking boss. I think this is a throwback to how Guthix was originally designed or revealed, right? When they first showed an image of Guthix, it was like a skull. So I don't know. This is probably one of the Guardians, yeah. Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, Guthixian Archive Guardian raid boss. Now we also have this guy here. This is what I was saying, one of the factions, I think. This is clearly a Ceridemon affiliated general or something, right? So you're gonna have to compete with some of these other generals from different gods. So, oh man, it kind of reminds me of the World Wix quest, because literally a bunch of the generals from other gods also show up and you have to, like, kick their butts. Next we have now is the rewards primer. So this is the only other blog that we have of race 4. So this is, like, super later in the year for sure, because they haven't even given us details on their actual rewards. This is just them telling us what their design philosophy is for the rewards of raids, and they're basically just asking us if their philosophy makes sense. There is 3 important elements for raids rewards that they want to make sure they have, right? So as you can see here, the first one is a Megarare, right? T-Bow, Scythe, Shadow. And the second one is armor set, right? So really strong armor set that is effectively best in slot, like Missouri Ancestral. And then the third component is standalone rewards. Things like Elder Maul, Din's Bulwark, basically best in slots, but a bit more niche, right? Like more niche than, like, Missouri, for example. So I don't think anyone's really gonna disagree with that. I feel like, yeah, pretty much everyone agrees that there should be probably 5 to 6 items, one of them being a mega rare, right? 3 of them being I guess the 3 set for armor. I guess honestly 2 being, like, standalone. So I think honestly just 5 rewards is plenty, you know. But yeah, 6 is okay if they really can cook up some cool items. So they went on to address more specifically what their design philosophy is for each of the 3 sections. So for the most part, they said for mega rares, they like the slow, hard-hitting concept, and they also like when the mega rare has a broad niche that it absolutely decimates at, although that broad niche has, like, an inverse. For example, Scythe, right? If you can melee a creature that is 3 by 3 tiles or larger, then chances are the Scythe will absolutely shit on it, right? So, Verzik, the Soul Boss, right? Nightmare, right? Large creatures, no problem. Scythe's 3x hits will absolutely decimate. And the inverse, right? If you're fighting something small, just a 1 by 1 enemy, then the scythe can only do 1 hit. So it's missing a ton of its power, right? So that immediately nerfs the crap out of it. Just 1 hit, dude, you might as well use a whip. At that point, it's better because it hits like the same and the whip is faster. T-Bow absolutely decimates enemies with really high magic. So things like Kriara, even Cerebos, Ohm, right? Very high magic. T-Bow is practically unbeatable. Now, if you are fighting something that has very low magic, like a fire giant, then the T-Bow sucks donkey balls, right? Because even something like a rune crossbow could outperform it in that case. Shadow's a terrible example because it just doesn't really have much of a drawback. I mean, it multiplies negative magic stats, but you pretty much never wear like negative magic gear with the Shadow, so it's kind of like whatever. And they did say that they're still looking into refining the Shadow, aka rebalancing it. We don't really know like what's their deal with that, but yeah, they are looking into it. You know, try to make the Shadow feel more like a T-Bow and a Scythe. So they're leaning towards more of a either a melee Megarare or a range Megarare. I think a melee Megarare makes more sense, just because they did say this raid they wanted to be more melee focused, right? So they wanted to be like heavy on melee. They said that somewhere in the blog. So it only makes sense that they introduce a melee Megarare, and I think this could tie in really well with a few other points. For example, I think Crush. I think a lot of people, you know, have kind of like felt that the age of Crush is coming back, right? Because the last time Crush was super relevant was like 6 years ago when Nightmare came out, right? That was before Torva, so, you know, Inquisitor armor with that set effect and the Crush accuracy made it literally the best offensive melee in the game, right? And then after Next came out and TOA came out, it was like Stab for a while, right? Torva replaced Oathplay, and then things like the Fang took over where the enemies like Next and TOA are weak to Stab, right? So then Stab was hot for a while, and then Slash recent times became very hot for the last 2 years, right? Because DC2 bosses were Dorvis, Duke, Coliseum, Scythe buff, right? And then you have O-Play that improves Slash even more, and then Emberlight too that complements a lot of Slash again, because it's very much a Slash heavy weapon against like Duke and like Yama, right? So Slash just took over recently too. So with that being said, they could do a Crush Megarare, right? Not saying that it should be like, you know, the king of Crush weapons, but like it should be primarily a Crush weapon, and maybe the 3-set armor drops from Race 4 could be an Inquisitor armor upgrade like Missouri, because Inquisitor is much easier to get nowadays, right? They have buffed the drop rates a ton over the years, and they also made Nightmare faster to kill. And this is coming from me, dude. I solo Nightmare when it first came out. I spent 2 minutes running there for 1 to 2 kills, and then I would spend 20 minutes killing one of the Nightmares, 100 plus hours for 1 drop. All right, so it's not like that anymore. So I think Nightmare has changed a lot so that the gear, you know, Inquisitor gear is actually accessible to the point that you can actually upgrade it, kind of like Armadale into Missouri, right? Also, in terms of a Megarare specifically, I have like a cool idea. I'm not gonna really push for it or anything. I just want to explain my idea because I think it follows in the spirit of, you know, Scythe and T-Bow, and I kind of want to give another example so that other people, other viewers, can also, I guess, be inspired to create something or think of something similar, right? That they can provide for feedback, maybe in the comments or in like Reddit for Jagex to look into. So for example, what if this new melee Megarare, right? Its concept is based on speed of the enemy, right? So it performs incredibly well or basically unbeatable against enemies that are like super slow. What I mean by that is if nothing's attacking it for a while, like you can attack very fast, right? Like 3 tick speed or something, or 2 tick speed. And then if something attacks it, then it just becomes slower, right? Maybe it becomes like 5 ticks or something. I think that is a really easy to understand concept and has a lot of room in terms of, I don't know, being used at a lot of places, because like there's a lot of bosses that attack really slow. There's also, I guess, bosses that can do a lot of damage, right, successively. So yeah, it's like a concept where it's broad enough, then it would do amazing, right, on those slow enemies. But if it's against fast enemies or multi-attack scenarios, right, or mob, or like situations where a ton of things are attacking you, right, interruptions, then that weapon's gonna suck. So that's just like an idea, right? If somebody could like expand on that idea for me, do numbers, right, like stats and things like that, that'd be crazy. I want Megarare weapons with those concepts, right? That isn't just like, oh, it has the highest like crush stat, you know, so therefore it's just the strongest crush weapon, you know. That's boring. I feel like a Megarare weapon needs to be much more broad, and you know, you can describe it in like a cool sentence, right? And then people would just absolutely like, you know, be excited over it, right? Like Scythe destroys large enemies. That's hype. So in this part, they're expanding their thoughts on adding potential new armor sets. So range is definitely out of the question for race 4, since Missouri is the most recent, and Dishonest Quiver and all the Blood Moon Rise range rewards are too recent. So yeah, definitely no more range upgrades for that. Also, melee is a bit rough because O-Play happened recently, right? And they could do like a stab armor set, but I feel like, man, stab's just been abused for recent times, and you really don't want to, you know, pull out the last easy set upgrade so soon, right after O-Play. For example, Inquisitor and O-Play is like 6 years apart, right? So you don't want to just do another type of niche style like less than a year apart. But like I said, I think upgrading Inquisitor makes sense, right? Especially because they do want to do like a melee focus raid, right, for raids 4. And so if they add more crush enemies, you know, in race 4, it will work really well, right? Because then you have the armor, it will complement Scythe, Maze, the new Spec weapon, right, from Bloodwood Rises. Also even the sword bracks, you know, that'd be kind of sick. Armor for magic, though, there's potential there. You know, Ancestral is 9 years old, and the last time they added magic gear was like that's relevant was Virtus, and that complemented ancient magics, right? It's BIS for ancient magics. They could go the route of adding a magic set that is BIS elemental spells, but there really isn't any endgame bosses right now that elemental spells really go like ham, you know. It's like better than things like charged staffs, right? And by the time they add more elemental endgame bosses, which I know they will, right, they're working towards that, it's a bit too late. I guess one other thing is the other part, right, the third component, standalone rewards. I don't really have any ideas myself. The Lightbearer is just not a good example for a standalone reward with certain niche use case, because the Lightbearer is insanely broad. It's effectively its own Megarare power. It's just super common though, right? It's like disgustingly common for how strong this thing is. This ring almost destroyed every other ring that came out into the game, right? Like except like Alter. And Alter is just hanging on, you know, barely hanging on in terms of this people just camping the crap out of Lightbearer, right? And Magus is like only if you really use like Shadow, right? Like Lightbearer is just so freaking ridiculously strong. If they were to release standalone items from Race 4, I think it should be more in the lines of Din's Bulwark, Elder Maul, right? Because they are best in slot, except they're definitely way more niche, right, than Lightbearer, I would say. Like, I guess Fang too, you know, they did nerf the slash double roll, so yeah, just more in line with something like this. Just definitely not Lightbearer. Lightbearer is like its own can of worms. If you guys have really cool ideas for rates 4 rewards, like I saw some on Reddit, for example. Obviously some of this is memes, but yeah, like this armor Inquisitor upgrade, Elder Godsword kind of like R3 style, and like this, you know, crush mace, right? A lot of people, you know, we're also feeling the same about the whole Megarare being like a melee weapon, right? Crush based. But yeah, anyways, that's it, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this freestyle. Just figure I'd make it now since I'm gonna be in Japan for 2 weeks, so I figure I'd put out something like this, you know, in between the vacation. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next video very soon after I get back.